It's January 28th, 2026. Welcome in everyone for daily anchor point and some insight today. So I awoke to the day with a few things running through my mind and downloads coming in. The first thing that I heard today was you have to just let this be done. You have to let some things are done, permanently done. Not just kind of done, not just done for now, not just sort of done, permanently done. I sat with this because it does apply to my personal life, and I know that it applies to the collective as well. So I sat with it for a while, and I kind of just wanted to go over and dissect that. And also I did a 1-card pull on that just for clarification. And don't laugh. And I drew a diagram here to kind of express what came through for me today to make more sense for myself, and hopefully it'll make more sense to you as well. So I wanted to talk today about how mourning timelines can essentially wreak so much havoc. I brought that up yesterday in the read about mourning and feeling the feels. There are things collectively and obviously in our lives individually, if we can think about that, right? So think of a timeline, a trajectory. Maybe you worked very hard to be on. You spent a lot of time, you spent a lot of years, you spent a lot of, blood, sweat, and tears in a certain path, on a certain trajectory. And maybe not. Maybe you didn't spend a lot of time. Maybe you just spent a lot of energy, a lot of the same amount of effort in less time. Time is really irrelevant, okay? However, when timelines suddenly shift, like maybe that timeline, you spent too much time on that timeline and it was not ever meant to be a permanent thing for you. If you're stubborn like me, sometimes you have a tendency to force things. I don't, however, anymore, but when I was younger, determination and will, if I want to do something, I'm absolutely going to do it. I will turn this fucking tide to do it, right? And that's awesome. However, it doesn't work that way. I had to learn how to, re-circumvent that energy and see it differently and change things in order for it to actually be right. It was like, heart in the wrong place type of deal. Anyway, coming back to when a trajectory, when a timeline fully closes, there's a period when we have to feel what we're feeling. We have to feel the grief and then come into this space of, I'm going to say absolute radical acceptance, right? That would be a sense of radical acceptance. And through that radical acceptance is the underlying absolute trust in the universe. Because if you trust in the universe and you trust in your higher being and you trust that you are the architect and that you are the creator, you're a co-creator of your experience, then the process of grief and the process of letting go of certain trajectories, what could have been, what if I could have, what if they did, what if this, what if that, it could have been this, it could have, those can keep going on forever. Those are the loops that we get into. Here's a little sad, the little sad diagram here of being stuck in the loop. What if loops? The what if loops are connected to the hungry ghost. Look at the ghost. The hungry ghost, the energy drain. It's literally eating your life force. It's literally gobbling up the life force. And it will continue to do so. Back and forth, back and forth. See, the old trajectory here, I have this. The could have beens and the if only. Well, that shit stops here, right? We have a definitive line. A line in the sand, folks. It is a line. It is a line of fire at this point. Okay. Anyway, but this is so super easy just to get stuck into. If you're a very sensitive, loving, compassionately built being like myself, it can be very hard to essentially go through the grief and let go. So I just kind of wanted to explain this through the diagram of why why we have to let it go. And what is waiting for us on the other side once we do. So essentially, you could create an egregore, a thought form that creates its own entity, essentially, right? If you think of it like this, all of that dead energy from that timeline, it goes somewhere. It doesn't just disappear, because no energy disappears. It only recycles, it only transforms, it only is created into something else. So don't ever, ever, ever think that any energy that you had put out there somewhere is just suddenly gone. No, you literally have to bring it back in. You got to call it back. We got to call part of the process is the reclamation and the transmutation, because the energy that was put into that or put out there, it doesn't disappear. You could see it as laying in some sort of a graveyard somewhere of black dead energy. However, things can feed off of that. Things that feed off of that energy. If you don't call it back, call the energy back. Now, of course, in this diagram here, we're talking about an old trajectory that can never be. It just could never be. Why? Because you got better things coming. You can't even believe it right now, but you need to. You need to be open. You need to be open. Because it's coming. But first, we have to get rid of this dude. When talking about dead timelines, it has no natural source of life or light. So it's literally siphoning here. It's siphoning your energy. And every time we revisit a dead timeline, we're literally sending life force to the dead timeline, to the siphon. You're sending your vital life force that's needed right now into the dead timeline. It's a loop. Loop alert. Wee. Anyway, stagnant grief rot. If it's not cleared, it becomes thick and dark and acts like an actual parasite. And other parasites like this dude feed off of that. So basically, every time, just as a reminder to kind of bring you back to a pivot, because I had a reminder today that that's no longer necessary. Right now, we're in a place where we can't afford to have stray thoughts. We can't afford to be sinking back into what could have been different, what should have been different. Yeah, it could have been a lot different. There's millions of different possibilities and timelines that could have been this way, that way, whatever, right? On and on and on. We don't have time for that. But what we do have to is focusing. And the card that I pulled here for this is the goat and the willow, overcoming obstacles. Mountain goats can damn near climb up anything. And I think that's associated with willow, which is also a healer of grief. That is very, very fitting. It's literally a time for severance from these hungry ghosts and dead timelines. Time for the severance of this. And it really comes down to gatekeeping your energy. You're deciding every time you want to think about old trajectory, oh my gosh, what could have been? It could have been this way. Whoop, let's bring it back in. Let's reel it back in. Gatekeeping your energy right now, pulling your focus into the now, all of you, being at peace, having that radical acceptance of what could never be, and just trust that that's a blessing, trust that that's an absolute blessing. So being at peace with what never was or never could be, right? Knowing that that's a blessing, even though, you might have wholeheartedly and wholespiritedly put yourself into that. But extracting the essence of those lessons so that you're taking back your vital sparks, the hope, the could have beens, you're going to sink that right back into yourself. Claim those lessons that you just learned from that dead timeline and really integrate the wisdom. It's being at peace with the closed chapter. Cut the cord. No more ghosts. Get rid of that. We are walking through the threshold right here of the new, your best possible timeline, the best one. We cannot continue to keep feeding the hungry ghosts. Sometimes we just have to let it be done permanently. I hope this has helped you in some way. I woke up thinking about this. Be well, stay sovereign, stay feral, my friends. I will talk to you soon.